So, good question. So our view is you really don't want to change people's behavior. If I drew a pie chart of all of the databases in the world and what percentage of them are SQL, it's about 98.3 or some number close to that. And so from an application perspective, it's SQL, it's JDBC, it's those kinds of technologies. Over time, we'll have other APIs that are related to that. But in effect, this looks from the outside like it is Oracle or MySQL or anything else. It's a relational database.
Sorry to be a little bit skeptic, but it sounds, and I saw your website, when I'm telling you, so it basically everything, it does everything and more for the fraction of the price, which sounds great, but the proof is in the pudding. Mm-hmm. What's the trade-off? Or there aren't any trade-off, and you could just invent something no one saw.
So the trade-off question, obviously, there are always going to be trade-offs. It's a system that has to make trade-offs. But that question largely comes in our space from the fact that people have built these kinds of systems on one architecture for 30 years, and that, which is the system R architecture. And so inherently, you're bounded by the capabilities of that architecture. And what people do in terms of trade-offs is they say, well, I can give you this if you throw away durability, or I can give you this if you throw away transactionality, or whatever. We're not doing trade-offs at that kind of level. But what are the trade-offs? I mean, we're not focusing this architecture right now on trying to go after the big warehouse engines. We could, but we're not trying to do that. This is something where, if you like, where the focus is very much around scalable, elastically scalable transactional loads is the core of what we're trying to do. And we do that better than anyone.
So could you talk a little bit more about what that trade-off is to go after a warehousing solution? Why is that not something you... Oh, I'm sorry. I even pulled it closer. Could you talk a little bit, I mean, could you go a little more into depth of why you've made that trade-off and
Yeah, I mean, the trade-off around not being a warehouse is that we just feel that there are a lot of players in that market. Right now, we feel our space is that there's really hardly anybody that's got anything close to what we're doing in transactional elastic scale-out. Architecturally, what we do, and I don't have time to go into how we do it, and I'm very happy to talk to anyone afterwards about that, can absolutely support it. There's nothing about it that doesn't allow us to do that. But that in terms of the focus, the really interesting market we feel is every single customer we talk to has the same issue, which is that they're reaching the limits of MySQL, they're reaching the limits of the other relational databases, they've got transactional requirements, they don't know where to go with those transactional requirements, they're putting caches on the front, they're trying to do clustering, they're denormalizing things, they're doing horrible sharding strategies, and those are the people that have really got the pain that we care about.
Who is your target customers, and what's your business model?
So general purpose database, obviously, and so it's long term. There's all sorts of people going to be interested. But if your question is go to market, where are we targeting? The business model is a download model. This is actually a very simple product. You can download it in about 10 minutes or less and install it and be running with it. So it's a great product for a download kind of model. A base installation is free forever, and that's going to be a database that's considerably more powerful than a traditional relational database running on the same hardware. And it's a scale-out pricing. So basically, as you buy nodes, you're paying per node per year to scale it out. I think that was all your questions.
Is it possible to summarize, in 1 minute, what is like the genius technical breakthrough that makes this actually work? I mean, otherwise it just sounds like a flying car. I mean, I don't even know what to do with this.
There are a number of things that are the technical insights that work together to do this. But if you're looking for one thing that really characterizes it, it's around the notion of asynchrony. It's like asynchronous transactions is essentially what's happened here. The big problem with transactional databases has been the need for network lock managers and the need for essentially even if you're running on a cluster of machines, causing that cluster of machines to behave like one big machine. That's something that doesn't scale to 100 machines or 1,000 machines. So it's around being able to do that asynchronously. Now, how do we do that? That gets quite detailed. It has some consequences at a theoretical level as well, which is that the way that NimbusDB gets to guarantee consistency is, if you like, an extreme version of something called MVCC. It's an extreme version of version control on a distributed basis. That's a very nuanced thing to be able to pull off in the way that we do. But that is what enables that asynchrony. I can give you a lot more detail. We're not being too sort of close about how it works because we're not scared about people being able to replicate it.
So one of the concern I would have, again, is security, distributed environments, distributing my data around. You talk about asynchronicity means, peer-to-peer, like start to think about some of these problems. Yeah. Have you guys embedded that in your thoughts?
So security is very, very core to how we think. All communications in the system, of which, as you can imagine, there are a lot, all of them are encrypted. Everything requires sort of security credentials for anything to join a database, for anything to take part in a database, for anything. So we're very, very focused on security. And clearly, you're right, that traditional databases, I talked about the scale-up model. One of the consequences of that is that people tend to have physical security of the box. In the world we're talking about, we're saying that you could be using for 10 minutes the machines in Tokyo because those guys have gone to sleep and get benefit from doing that. What are the security implications?
So it is embedded in your core thinking.
Absolutely. There's not a single communication that happens in the system that's not encrypted.
Anybody from the audience have a question? We still have a little bit of time. There's a hand right here.
So it sounds like you do a lot of stuff around consistency and version control. How do you handle write-heavy operations? Just because it seems like there'd be a lot of redundancy, and especially with the encryption stuff, there'd be a lot of
Just make sure you repeat the question so everybody can hear.
So the question was, how do we handle write-heavy operations? Well, every database in the world has the same problem. If you're going to have something which is completely read-dominated or completely write-dominated, that you're going to be running, in some sense, at disk speed. Okay, and so we have those same sort of criteria. I mentioned that we have redundant storage. There's a certain amount of multiplexing that happens in our case that many other people don't have. That's a little bit more like the sort of dynamo-style effect that you get. But if things are purely read-heavy or write-heavy, we're in a similar position to a lot of other people. We've got heavy encryption of the system, but we've also got heavy compression of the data, so that what's going to disk is not a table-structured, uncompressed file. What's going to disk actually is blobs. The back end of our system is a key value store, and it's compressed.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, our next founder is going to be the founder of RethinkDB. That's Slava Akhmadjet. Slava?
Thank you.
There you go.
Hello, my name is Slava. I'm the founder of RethinkDB. I'm very excited to be here. I'll tell you a little bit today about RethinkDB, what it does for our customers, how it got started, and what it's for. So RethinkDB is the database for scaling web infrastructures. Essentially, every time you're delivering a web service to consumers, be it via websites, mobile phones, or by some other means, RethinkDB is designed to scale the underlying database infrastructure under the hood. I'll tell you a little bit about how RethinkDB got started. I started my career in the financial industry over in New York, and part of my job was building ad hoc sort of database systems to handle workloads that existing relational database systems could not handle. And I've